Hello, and thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. Our feature presentation will begin shortly. But first, sit back and enjoy this brief educational video on Earth's disaster cycle.
Space weather? Yes, that's right, folks. Turns out the sun could impact Earth much more than we initially thought, and so our good friends with Space Weather News helped put together this educational video to help you understand what has become known as Earth's disaster cycle. Enjoy.
Well, hello there, boys and girls. Let's talk about our great big neighborhood pal, the sun. The sun gives us warmth and light, but it also shoots out all sorts of invisible rays and particles. Sounds scary, doesn't it? But don't fret, the Earth wears a protective blanket called the magnetic shield, and it's the very same thing that makes a compass point north. Now here's where it gets interesting. Every so often, Earth's magnetic field gets a bit mixed up. The North Pole can become the South Pole, and the South Pole the North. That's called a geomagnetic reversal. It's happened many times in Earth's long history, and it can make that shield weaker for a while. But Earth isn't floating all alone out there. Our whole solar system is traveling through the Milky Way galaxy. And out in that galaxy is something called the galactic current sheet. Think of it like a big cosmic wave, and every 12,000 years or so, our solar system surfs right through one. And when that happens, oh boy, the sun can really cut loose. Scientists call it a solar micronova. That's a sudden burst of energy, stronger than anything we've seen in modern times. It could shake up Earth's crust, stir the seas, and cause some very dramatic changes indeed. Now this all sounds very alarming? Yes. Not to worry. That is just Earth's disaster cycle. We'll all probably be long gone when this is predicted to happen, sometime around the year 2040.
The last one was 6,000 years ago, and it was one of the minor events. 6,000 years before that, there was a major event, a minor one 18,000 years ago, and so on and so forth. The worst one we know about was 40-something thousand years ago. But essentially they're happening approximately every 6,000 years, again with the really bad ones happening every 12,000 years. We're 12,000 years since the last bad one, 6,000 years since the last minor event, meaning we are perfectly due in time for another one, and everything we would be expecting to see if it was happening again now is in fact already taking place. The magnetic poles of Earth are moving. The magnetic field is weakening. This process is accelerating faster and faster over the last several decades. At some point, probably in the late 2030s or 2040s, we are going to have the magnetic pole shift. And when it happens, all at the exact same time, the climate's going to shift rapidly, far more than it has so far. We're going to be bombarded by much more radiation than any life on this planet has been in 12,000 years. We're going to be seeing birds, fish, insects, animals not knowing where they're going. Our technological world is going to be collapsing due to the fact that we don't have a way to protect the planet from the sun. The magnetic field is weakening, all while we're going to have to worry about our nuclear plants melting down. This is an extinction level event. We are due for it, and it is happening right now. We are able to track where the magnetic poles are and how they are moving, and the actual strength of the magnetic field. We can tell that the poles are moving and they're speeding up, and that the overall magnetic protection of our planet is weakening, and that is speeding up. The northern lights and the southern lights, the aurora. Over the last several years, we have been noticing they're stronger longer lasting, and extending more across the globe than we would expect. And so there are changes here on Earth that really give us the indication that this major event is happening. And given the implications in the geologic data, it's somewhere between remarkable and horrifying, because it's one of the most important topics in the world that virtually nobody is talking about.
This has happened before. There's evidence everywhere that shows this has happened before. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's evidence that suggests it's about to happen again.
Now, I've been to a couple of other ones. Like I said, went to Florida. They had actually found a part of a tusk and some saber-toothed tiger stuff. You know, because at this time, 12,000 years ago, those animals were basically wiped out in one day. Let's have a look at this shell wall here. Have you guys found any artifacts out here? Any prehistoric bones or that kind of stuff? And we know it happened on one day because the muck that's frozen in Alaska is a mishmash of predators, herbivores, everything. So it's, you know, this wasn't from predation. This everybody died at once. Now it's really interesting. Look at that black line running through that. I think that's probably an artifact of the event. I'd like to get some samples of that. What we have here is a horizon of shells. We have a lighter colored upper layer and a lighter colored lower layer, but you can see there's this layer of burnt shells. So we have unburnt shells here, burnt shells here, and unburnt shells up here. But the predominant layer of burnt is pretty, about 6-8 inches deep. So something was cooking them, and it can't be forest fires, not enough heat. But it's a strange anomaly that no one can really explain why it is these horizons of shells have this burnt band, and it runs all the way down, the whole thing.
You can think of these layers like rings on a tree. With a tree, each ring signifies a season. It grows in the spring, stalks in the winter. However, with these shell pits stretched for miles, each layer, considering how deep they are, may represent the 6,000-year magnetic cycle. You have to ask yourself, how did all these shells and bones end up here? We're over 30 miles from the ocean, and we're standing on top of an endless graveyard of a past world that stretches beyond the horizon. The sun woke up 12,000 years ago and resulted in this. And the sun is going to wake up again, perhaps in 2046. It's hard to say because we don't really know the beginning year, but we can base it off of magnetic cycles. And it looks like this one's about to end, and that's what I'm planning on. And that's what I'll be preparing for.
You know, my personal feeling is it's anyone's guess, luck of the draw. If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. If you make it, you still might survive it, but at least you got a chance. And throughout history, that's all human beings ever needed. So I have a background in chemistry, biochemistry, medicine, astronomy, physics, solar physics. The files talk to each other. So I'm able to see larger patterns that someone in a specific area of study might not see because of all the incidental things that contribute to a larger pattern. I'm Dr. August Dunning, and I am a researcher with Space Weather News, which is a independent research team has been playing around with the idea that we may have a recurring nova on our star every 12,000 years. I got an extensive background in many, many fields.
That's me right here. This is Administrator Odom. This is Gary Greeley and some other character. So I met Odom, and he said, you need to go and talk to the guys over at NASA. And so I did, and here's the model I built for Dr. Snyder. And these are the solar generators, the mirror generators here. And there's me and Buzz. Fun stuff.
When I was very young, my father said, you know, you don't like a lot of your classes, but just think of your head as a file folder and plug in that information, and eventually the folders will start talking to each other. And he was right. There are so many things happening over time, cycles, that it's reasonable to think that our star is just like any other star out there. And it's going to go through different life cycles and different periods of change during its exhaustion of helium and hydrogen and the whole thing that happens as stars age. But what's really interesting about our star is that there seems to be a pattern, about 12,000 year pattern, where it just lights up. When you start seeing auroras down in Florida, okay, you got a problem, because they're only supposed to be maybe as far south as Canada. But Florida, Cuba, that stuff, that means your geomagnetic field's not protecting it, which means something's up. So yeah, my whole deal right now is just stay alive, stay happy, stay healthy.
And when I was younger, like 39 or so, it was
in your car, you got a V6 or a V8. The engine's kind of mounted on a V. These are what's called horizontally opposed. So you got your 4 cylinders laying flat across, so they're actually firing back and forth. So if you notice, you got one set of spark plugs on the top, but you also got a set of wires coming from the bottom. Come around the back, you got one set of wires coming here, one set of wires running here, and they run to what's called a magneto. You're gonna find magnetos on a lot of your older engines, but it's essentially a small generator that's connected to the engine. So as long as the engine's running, it's producing electrical current. And that electrical current is used to directly run these spark plugs. Your car has the ignition coil, which is connected to the computer and everything else. So if your electrical system in your car dies, your engine dies. As pilots, it is important to know that there is a difference between true north and magnetic north. Who is aware that magnetic north is moving over time? All right, so a couple things about the Earth spinning. As it rotates, we have what's called true north and true south. The funny thing about that is that the magnetic north pole and the magnetic south pole don't necessarily align with the true north and the true south. Over time, it has shifted from being all the way over here and has moved across the surface of the world. Here we go, 1980. When I was born back in 1981, the magnetic North Pole was right up here in northern Canada, kind of where I'd imagine it would be. If we just fast forward, let's go back a little bit time from 1980, from my birth, 1900, notice it's still right there in northern Canada. Let's even come back to 1792. Notice it hasn't moved very much. Let's even come all the way back to 1655. It's still roughly in about the same position, right about there. Take a look at this. If you come back up here, 1969, 2001, it's moved a little bit, but it's still in the same rough area. Now let's go forward a little bit more. 2004, it's moving further north. 2006, moving further north. 2008, and coming on 2009, it has moved so far north that it is now off the screen. Over time, this thing is shifting, and what is going to happen in the future, I am not really sure where it's going to go. There's been speculation that it might flip. Maybe it'll be in our lifetime, maybe it won't. But it is interesting to note that it does move around at a very rapid pace.
Good afternoon, folks. We started off the morning trying to wrap our heads around the fact that the sun does more than give us light energy, it gives us particle energy. We talked about what those particles are, how that energy gets enhanced, amplified, waxes and wanes. In the second half of this morning, we talked about why we care. What you see on the screen right now are just the rapid magnetic pole shifts of the last 72,000 years. Every single one of them shows up in the data. There are now only 2 of them that don't officially have names, but yet they still show up in the data, and many geologists will say it's only a matter of time before they get names. Now, even though they are far more difficult to notice the further back in time you go, the last of these to actually get a name is the most recent one, the Tianqi event. It was about 6,000 years ago. There was a rapid shift in Earth's magnetic field. A lot of things died on the planet, and same with every 6,000 years into the past. We are 6,000 years past the last one, and what, of course, are we seeing? But Earth's magnetic field is changing once again, right on time. And Earth's magnetic poles are shifting again, and the magnetic field of our planet is weakening again. That is what the disaster cycle is. Now, there's several other elements to it. We're going to talk about a lot of those here.
My name is Ben Davidson. I'm the founder of Space Weather News, Observer Ranch, and the Suspicious Observers YouTube channel. I am an expert on the sun and how it affects the Earth, what we call space weather, and on Earth's magnetic field, how it changes over time, and how that impacts our planet Earth. There is an event that happens on this planet fairly cyclically, fairly regularly, called a magnetic pole shift. Some call it a geomagnetic excursion. Basically what happens is the magnetic poles of our planet begin to move from the places where they have been stable for several thousand years. And while this happens, the magnetic field of our planet itself begins to weaken. This is the magnetosphere, the magnetic shield that wraps around our entire planet, protecting it from the sun, supernova, cosmic rays, gamma ray bursts, all the scary energetic stuff that comes at us from space.
In the recent decades, the position of the magnetic poles has been moving very rapidly. It's been moving across northern Canada towards Russia, back again. That means the areas where you're going to have more or less problems with the satellites also shift. I'm Mark Barassa. I'm a professor of meteorology at Florida State University and the associate director of the Center for Ocean Atmospheric Prediction Studies. I lead a NASA science team for investigating surface winds. So we measure winds over the ocean. So there's different categories of solar flares. They're organized by order of magnitude, so a factor of 10 difference in strength. But as they go up in this letter, they become 10 times as bad. And when you get up to these more severe cases, they are not just a little bit more severe than the lower ones, they are a lot more severe. So it's been hypothesized that we're due for a change, a swap of the magnetic polarity of the Earth, where south and north would swap signs. And during that process, it's been suggested that the electromagnetic field around Earth could weaken. It would be more like Mars, which doesn't have a protective electromagnetic field. In terms of electronics on the Earth, if we got one of those blasts, it will cause an enormous electric surge in the power lines, those that are still metallic. So if we have fiber optic cable, not a problem. If we have the actual power lines, though, which are more metal, then you're going to get them destroyed. We will have them glow, we will have fires, we will have melting of things. Our power grid is the same power grid we've had decades ago.
I study space physics and space engineering, and I'm interested in how energy from the sun influences the space environment of Earth. I'm Mark Moldwin, a professor of climate and space science and engineering here at the University of Michigan. One of the areas that I specialize in is space weather, and that's how the sun influences the Earth's environment, and particularly technology. So from satellites to power grids to communication systems, navigation systems. These large geomagnetic storms are sort of like hurricanes. They get a name, and they're usually named after the time of year. So there's a famous Halloween storm and a Bastille storm, but a few of them are named after people. And the most famous geomagnetic storm happened in September of 1859, when a scientist, Richard Carrington, was taking a sketch of the sun. And while he was sketching the sunspot of the sun, he saw a visible flash. About a day later, he noticed that the compass needle, the magnetometer, wiggled. He wrote a letter to the Royal Transactions saying, "Dear sirs, on this date I observed this flare, and then the geomagnetic disturbance. Did anybody else observe it?" And people around the world said that they did. And they observed aurora in Cuba, right? I mean, so this was a lot of energy dumped into the system. He suggested that whatever happened on the sun caused the magnetic field to wiggle. And so that was the first suggestion of this connection, that storms on the sun can cause storms on Earth. The Carrington event back in 1859 was pre all types of technology. Communication was through telegraph wires, and there were fires that broke out at railway stations at the telegraph. And coronal mass ejections are huge explosions of the outer atmosphere of the sun. And so you can imagine an aircraft carrier, and now think about 500,000 aircraft carriers. So that's a mass of a coronal mass ejection. It can be thrown off the sun at a few million miles an hour. And so it can take a day or so to go from the sun to the Earth, but it has a huge amounts of energy, just momentum, and it hits the Earth's protective shield, and it causes it to ring like a bell. A big coronal mass ejection Carrington event storm could knock out Europe or North America's power grid.
Only about 10 years ago, we realized why all of a sudden the telegraph lines ignited on planet Earth 19 hours later, because that's how long it took for the energy to get from the sun to the Earth to induct into the telegraph lines, to light them up on fire, shock operators, to cause fires in the cities and cause fires in the brushlands. That was from a small solar flare, really, a small one comparatively. But the deal is, if that same one happened now, we have a lot more than telegraph lines. We'd lose all our satellites in space. We'd lose a lot of the communication stuff on Earth. We'd lose a lot of we'd completely be gone with GPS. That'd be gone. We're gonna have lots of transformer fires, all that kind of stuff, and blackouts. Maybe years to fix all the blackouts for something that massive. Thing is, though, these things happen all the time. There was one in the 600s called the Charlemagne event. And there's another one that is even earlier than that they recorded in Japan, where had it been any other kind of society, they would have never had they would have no technology after these events. So these are not uncommon. So the disaster cycles are the different periods of time that the sun goes through these changes, or sunspot cycles, or Gleisberg cycles, or whatever it goes through, to have these events happen on Earth that are so catastrophic magnetically, solar energy-wise, coronal mass ejection-wise. That's what the disaster cycles are. There's many of them. We should be having another Carrington very soon, maybe in the next 5-10 years. But that's just a pregame, you know.
This was already an extinction level event, where clusters of extinction throughout the past seemed to tie in with these magnetic pole shifts. But now humans have made it even worse for themselves. We are at even more risk now than any species has potentially ever been on this planet for something that happens over and over again, very regularly, which is due to happen again now, and which has already begun. Things really started to change with Earth's magnetic field in the middle of the 1800s. They pinpoint it to 1859, the same exact year as the sun's last superflare. From then up to the year 2000, we were averaging about 10 to 20 kilometers of magnetic pole movement a year. and we had lost a total of about 10% of the magnetic protection that our planet enjoys. And that was in about 150 years or so. That 10% jumped up to 15% by the year 2010. We went from losing about 5% a century to 5% a decade. In fact, the most recent mission, space mission, to monitor Earth's magnetic field, it's by the European Space Agency, it's called SWARM. Their mission manager came out and publicly said, we've gone from losing 5% of our magnetic field per century to now 5% per decade. We're losing the magnetic field 10 times faster now. Interestingly, he didn't have that job much longer.
There's a lot of people that want to move out. They want to get out of the cities. They want to get out of the populated areas. And this valley has a really nice climate to it. It's dry air, not a ton of rain, not a ton of snow. If it does snow here, it doesn't stick around very long. I think there's a lot of people that are either moving here or planning to move. We've got 4 lots of the 33 left to sell. Since we opened in September, I've probably shown 50 people, 50 families, the lots that we have available. A local real estate agent called Ben and thanked me for all the economic development that's going on out here, because she said that she's never had this spike of interest in real estate in this valley. So I'm Mike Haywood. I'm the operation manager here at Observer Ranch. My jobs entail everything from greeting and hosting guests that come here, helping people find a location in this area, to washing the bathrooms, doing the floors, and basically fixing anything that breaks. A lot of hats that I wear. We're not a normal campground. We're a campground for today and education for tomorrow. We're always trying to develop skills within the members that come here, the guests that come here, and they can come if they have questions. It's not a BS thing, because then you lose that connection and that community aspect. If you're not, honest with people, you're not going to succeed. And that's what we're trying to do here, is just present a place where people can be authentic, they can learn skills, and feel like they're part of the family, not just the community, but part of the family. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mark. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Is it humans that are changing this planet, or is this a cycle where this planet goes through maybe every 12,000, maybe every 6,000 years? We're going to have a 90-degree flip. North America is actually going to shift to South America. I tell people that Maine's weather will be Florida's weather, and Florida's weather will be Maine's weather. We're kind of going to, in this valley here, will be pretty much the same, but we will be in the southern hemisphere. But as that crust is shifting, like in a bathtub, when you shift the water back and forth, as North America is falling to the south, it's going to start piling up on the East Coast and into the Gulf. And it's going to pile and pile and pile. This all happens in about a day.
When I started putting these puzzle pieces together around 2012, it felt like I was basically on an island. There were a handful of people on the internet talking about this, maybe a couple of professors you could find talking about it. Not anymore. The fire has hit kindling. Tens, maybe hundreds of millions of people. I saw Elon talking about this on a podcast. We're talking about, in the English-speaking world alone, it's got to be tens of millions of people who know that this is coming, or have at least heard something about this. We're going to find out what human beings are made of. That's the good and the bad. The more people that know, the more people that will be prepared. Physically, intellectually, and lethally. How you feel doesn't matter. Facts and action.
One of the big ways that toxins come through is in our water supply. It sounds terrible. It's supposed to be sanitized and purified for us. Very happy that my buddy installed this for me. I'm pretty sure that everything me and my family are drinking is not only clean, but has the right minerals for what we need.
When you first start watching the sun, you can't really help but be taken in initially, almost all by itself, by its beauty. You're looking at something incredible in a way that you've never looked at it before. And then you either incorporate or you learn just how much our sun is impacting everything in our solar system. Importantly for us here at Earth, the sun could at any moment determine you guys are going back to the Stone Age. All your electrical technology is not going to work anymore. It controls major climatological cycles, has an impact on volcanoes. Its interaction with Earth's magnetic field is critically important to everything about the way that we live our lives. Normally, not such a big deal, but with Earth's magnetic field basically heading towards failure at the moment, it all of a sudden becomes very important, which is why everybody needs to be preparing in some form or fashion. When you look at the fact that it is not just Earth changing in this way right now, but the sun is changing. And in fact, all of the planets are changing, and our scientific equipment has become sophisticated enough that we can detect changes in even the interplanetary space between the planets. There's more charged material, there's more dust. It really begins to push one towards the idea that there is something happening to the entire solar system right now. And there happens to be a pretty good explanation for this on a galactic level. Basically, a galactic magnetic reversal, where Earth and the entire solar system is traveling from the northern magnetic fields of the galaxy into the southern magnetic fields of the galaxy. And this has an impact on everything within the solar system. And turns out they actually have identified something that could be the culprit here in the Milky Way and actually in other galaxies. Stars have it as well. They can reproduce it in a lab. It's basically an electric current sheet, a wavy, rippling electric field going through approximately the equator of the galaxy, which separates the north and the south magnetic fields. This exists. They know it exists. They've actually characterized the one in the Milky Way quite well. They know how high the waves go. They know the thickness of the wave. And when you look at the fact that this is a large scale, I mean, much greater than our entire solar system, flip of the magnetic fields, it's much easier to begin to understand how the entire solar system, for us most importantly, the Earth, is changing in the way that it is. And it also explains why it happens on such a regular cycle, as this wave is fairly regular and tends to sweep past our solar system after a set period of time, which in this case, probably about 6,000 years. The peak event occurs when the galactic magnetic reversal triggers the solar micronova. Scientists know two ways to trigger a repeating nova on a star: a magnetic kick and material being dumped onto the star. The galactic magnetic reversal is the kick, and the galactic current sheet brings the extra material like nova dust and random gases. The evidence of nova isotopes in the bone fragments and black glass, the ancients fearing the sun as a destroyer, and both ways to trigger a nova, coming at the exact same time. Quite the coincidence.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
That's where all these programs came, to be able to launch men into space. It wasn't about selling tractors. It was about finding out what the heck's going on and proving it. They proved it. And they found the same kind of black glass and huge sand dunes on Mars. They find all this stuff on these planets. This stuff's been blowing out the sun for eons. And we're about to be in the middle of the next one pretty soon.
Einstein was convinced the Earth turns over in these disasters. So was Major White, who led Project Nanook to the Canadian Arctic. And just think about the frozen mammoths with food undigested in their mouths and stomachs. They had to dig those creatures out of the ice. Nothing is growing there now, but these animals froze in the glacial period when it was even colder. So what were they eating? They weren't, at least not at this latitude. They were grazing in the mid-latitudes, maybe low latitudes, and then found the Earth, thrusting them to the polar freeze and the crustal shift.
And that's what's dangerous about these micronovae. When it goes down into the lithosphere, these olivine type rocks, and they start getting slippery, that's when things start shifting around, going crazy. But we see the same sort of things happen now. We're seeing earthquakes happen more often. We're seeing volcanoes happen more often. We're seeing the induction of sun energy into our lithosphere to produce these effects. And there's some real issues happening in our core too. These differences in rotation and weirdness happening down there. So something's up. And but for the most part, you can't really see it because you go to work, come over to work, see a TV set, watch your TV or whatever. But if you look at it a long enough timeline, you can see these changes have been occurring for some time now.
The fact that it's going to happen in the 2030s or 2040s, about 95% certain. Things like the way the Earth is going to tilt and the fact that it's a solar micronova rather than some kind of major flare or anything like that. 75 to 80%. There's no other explanation that matches the evidence. Although I do recognize it's possible that we just haven't thought of something yet. But it fits so well with the evidence and the scientific explanation and the physics-based mechanism of how it plays out. I think it's important to know about the Earth turning over and the micronova and how the government has hidden this and how billionaires are preparing and how to tie this into the fact that this is exactly what religions have told us is going to happen to our culture. It's going to happen to the sky, going to happen to the sun. Revelation 16:8. And the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and the power was given unto him to scorch men with fire. A third of the stars disappearing from the sky. They knew the difference between stars and meteors. A third of the stars coming down is not meteors. That's the earth going like this, and part of the sky you could see before, no longer visible. The earth swaying to and fro like a drunkard. You put all these things together and you have to wonder, wait a minute, not only does the math say this is how it plays out, the physics and the chemistry says this is how it plays out. This is what we're watching. Oh, and by the way, they knew this a couple thousand years ago and put it in a book. Sure, there are some details and some aspects that I've shared that just best fit the evidence. But the fact that there is a cyclical magnetic pole shift, we are perfectly due for it. It is happening already. It has begun. It is about to culminate in an extinction level event on this planet. No scientist ever says 100% certain, so I'll say 99.9%. Those things, that's real, it's happening. It is our imminent future. All of the geologic evidence suggests that these magnetic pole shifts have significant impacts on our weather, the climate overall, on the radiation environment of our planet that we're living in, as well as various other geophysical changes. Some scientists have called it an environmental disaster. Some have called it an extinction level event. Unfortunately, we are in the beginning processes of having another one of these magnetic pole shifts right now. It doesn't just happen to Earth. It happens to the entire solar system. Every star, every planet, every world in the path of the galactic current sheet. When our solar system crosses that sheet, the sun reacts as well. Before the major solar outburst, the sun will grow dimmer, redder. The sky of Earth will take on a copper hue as dust filters into the inner system. The ancients feared the red sun, and for good reason. The sun goes red, then dims to near black. But then comes the micronova. The flash reaches us in minutes, the nova shockwave in hours. When it hits, the magnetosphere collapses. Imagine if one day we woke up, there was no electricity, no internet, no phones. You turn on the faucet, nothing happens. The globalized economy collapses. All the cooling of nuclear power plants fails, and every single one in the world is at risk of meltdown at the exact same time as the rest of this is happening. The electromagnetic surge through the crust and mantle melts them free from their locked position, and the outer shell of Earth begins to slip. Entire climate zones exchange places in one day. The crust rolls into the oceans, unmoved in their inertia. Pacific Oceans destroys the region of Asia where 70% of humans live. Australia and New Zealand are hit from the north and the south. civilization is wiped from the face of the Earth. And then, a global winter sets in. Everything freezes. When the dust finally settles, Earth is reborn, and the 6,000-year cycle begins again. North and South are no longer where they were. Many who survive will need to do so underground.
There are so many smart and creative people around here. A lot of different observers have different reasons for moving out here. We're coming out from Western Massachusetts, and you look at the history books, 1800 froze to death, a year without summer. Used to be snow coming down in July. And it's like, that's what happens when a volcano is popping off. Northeast turns into just a frigid Siberia. And there's a lot going on. And I mean, you have you hear NASA reporting about dust accumulating on the solar corona. And it's like, well, okay, that's very interesting. I was also just reading an article about what happens when a star gets dust deposited on it. It blows off with mega flares, and these whole corona blows off sometimes. And it's like, well, that's, it's an observer. It's like, okay, so we got dust accumulating on a star, moving into our solar system. Kind of it sounds like something you should pay attention to. Think about it a little bit.
About a year ago, started really considering where I lived in the event of like another Carrington type of scenario, Carrington event.
Yep.
And the East Coast being just very
populated.
Very populated.
Very difficult on a good day.
Yeah, difficult on a good day. So started looking west. So I just looked for a job that I could do while we were out here, and
well, and also, I mean, it's goodness, he's such a smart guy. I mean, the technical stuff.
I appreciate that.
Well, it's truth. It's truth. The two of us have a lot in common in that we're coming out here not for our sake. We got little ones, and we don't want them to be in the middle of a storm.
It really is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's kind of like the more you learn, the more you don't want to know.
That too. You come full circle too, I suppose. There's horseshoe theory, you learn enough, you start wanting to just hang out by a campfire.
Is it the final countdown?
Mm-hmm.
It's the final countdown.
Down.
Na, 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 na.
It's an appropriate song for this place, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Final countdown.
When my heart stopped, I had an experience that makes me not afraid to die. It was the most peaceful I remember ever feeling in my entire life. It's peaceful. There aren't any human words to describe it. but it was amazing. It was amazing. So no, I'm not afraid to die. I mean, this has been such a long time coming, and you get here and you're around a lot of like-minded people. It's not cultish, and trust me, there's still a whole lot of not seeing eye to eye about things and politics and things like that with people. I was listening earlier and could tell there's still a lot of divergence on a lot of things. But there are a few people here that, that feel the same way about most things, but we all kind of feel the same way about what's coming and what's going to happen. So ultimately, I think they're very similar. So it feels good for that because you don't get this at home.
There are ancient communities carved into the mountainside, ancient underground cities, like in Turkey, where they housed around 20,000 people with their livestock and food. Underground in a labyrinth of caves. You find similar underground communities all over the world. Today, the term caveman is almost derogatory, but rarely do we stop and think about how on earth a place like this might have been constructed without any kind of modern tools. Or more importantly, why would these ancient civilizations feel the need to go to such a great length to live underground, or to have their homes carved deep into a mountainside? They were protecting themselves from something.
You know, when I was a kid, I noticed that the sun, I remember, used to be a lot more yellow. And I thought that as I got older that it was maybe my vision that was changing or something like that, but the sun sort of looks a little bit more whiter right now. But when Ben mentioned that the sun had used to be more yellow, I went, I remember that. And so I went on the internet and I tried to find, well, are other people noticing that the sun is getting more white? And sure enough, there's a whole bunch of people that are noticing the exact same thing. My name is Zach Voorhees. I'm known as the Google whistleblower, and I had an inside view of how they did their censorship within Google. And I know the program. That program was called Machine Learning Fairness. And it was that program that led me here to Observer Ranch today. You know, I used to really believe in climate change and all that, and then I started running the numbers once I started seeing the level of censorship that Google was doing, and I started to realize that these numbers aren't lining up. I'm starting to see that global warming itself is a cover. It's the disinformation that sucks all the oxygen out of the room to cover up something that's adjacent to that. And if you look at this disaster cycle and the flaring of the sun and the loss of the magnetic shield and the increase of the aurora borealis, like what perfect excuse they could use to say, well, it's actually our faults. right? When it's something that's completely beyond the scope of what any human could do or any group of humans, that's actually coming from the source of nature. And instead of telling that as the truth, to transmogrify that into gaslighting and blaming the person themselves as some sort of committing of original sin, and that this is why the sun is angry at us. It kind of reminds me of like an ancient way of thinking where the priest said that it was the people themselves that made the sun god angry, right? But you swap out the sun god and put in the earth god, and all of a sudden you've got a very ancient, original sin tale that is being told to us to control us, to regulate, to take away our rights. And what's interesting is that it also serves to cover up a natural disaster cycle. And so you got this like coincidence of where it lines up perfectly. There is a little tiny disaster like what we had with Noah's flood, and then the big one. And that depends on whether you're crossing over the middle or crossing over the top or the trough of this galactic current sheet. And so the timeline lines up. The Bible's about 6,000 years. We're at the end of that cycle right now. And so that's been the most surprising thing. But then I asked myself, what are the chances that I would be born at a time when this event would be happening? I mean, there's, if you were to live 100 years, there'd be 10 of those in 1,000 years. And this disaster cycle is, every 6,000 years. So that's 1 out of 60 chance that you would be born in a disaster cycle. So the question I have is my generation in that unlucky position? And the answer might be yes.
The Aurora Borealis happening down in South Florida, where I spent a part of the year, really piqued my interest because I know that should not be happening. When I was studying geology, we briefly mentioned the pole shift, but it was something that happens every 100,000 years, and it was brushed off as no one really knows any science around it. But when that event happened, I started looking online to try to find an explanation as to how the northern lights are able to penetrate the magnetic field to be seen down in South Florida. The evidence on what is very likely to happen is really starting to pile up. We're witnessing all of these changes in the weather, and I was always suspect that it had anything to do with man-made climate change. I've only started thinking about it 6 months ago, but there's two ways to go about it, because we don't know when the solar kill shot, as Ben refers to it, the technological solar kill shot, will happen. That can happen next month, or that can happen in 5+ years. And then there is time with no electricity until the bad stuff happens, which is the micronova and the potential turning of the Earth. So that time period, that could be a decade or that could be a year. Where do you spend that decade of no electricity? You can spend that decade in a harsh environment that becomes an incredible environment when the Earth turns. Or you can spend it in a beautiful environment knowing that it's not survivable. And we just don't know when that solar kill shot to kill electronics is coming. So if I happen to be here when that happens, I will remain here. But if I happen to be on a Caribbean island, then I just get to enjoy the solar kill shot that takes out the electronics occurs. I see myself being totally at peace with the tsunami eventually coming, and some people like Ben were right.
I went to a festival in town, and one of the ladies came up to me and just started yelling at me and saying, "You guys are just a cult out there, you're doomsdayers." And I'm like, oh, wow. I've been out there for this long. I don't see that at all. Why don't you come out and see the ranch, About 6 months later, she came out with a school group. And then she says, "This place is really cool." So I work all day. I'm usually up at 7, and then I work until about 10 o'clock at night. But it doesn't feel like work because I'm always interacting with guests, and that's what I really like. One of the cool things about coming out here is that it lines up with what I wrote down in 2000. In 2000, I wrote down a list on a Yahoo group about what I wanted to do, the dream of meeting people, helping them with new skills, and then this came about. Mike is the operational manager. He oversees and he keeps everybody in line and helps make sure that we're all logistically doing what we're supposed to be doing. So you said the same thing that I said. We both said the same thing about each other.
Well, good. Got our notes all taken care of.
I didn't know that, but it's true.
Barb's the boss.
Mm-hmm. You make me think that I'm the boss.
Yeah.
I really like this planet. Ever since I was dropped off here. When I was a kid, I said, "Mom, I know I'm gonna die. I'm gonna be hit by a meteor." And she said, "Don't talk like that, you're crazy." I said, "I might be, but that's what I just saw. Meteor, sun, whatever." It's like I realized at a very young age that this is a very transient period in our time machine. It's funny, I grew up in Florida. Moved out of Indiana, came down, learned how to surf. Been surfing this ocean for 50 years, something like that. And it's always fun to come back. It's a beautiful planet. I love being in this place. And I can see where maybe it's time to wipe the slate again. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that yes, in 20 years, it's going to be all wiped clean. I give you two options. You can either worry about it, or be like Dr. Strangelove, how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb, because there's good things about her. But you've got, let's say, 20 years. So if you got 20 years, you got a lot of times, a lot of fun. Try to enjoy it. That's what I'm doing. Only a couple hundred years ago did we have telegraph. Did we have railroads? And then we had telecommunication. And then we had medicine. Then we had microscopes. Then we had refrigeration. And these two things, by the way, probably doubled our lifespan from 40 to about 80. I'd like to see it last a lot longer than just 80. My professional career has really been centered around longevity, living longer, living healthier, and realistically, it's the end of the world for most of us. All these people on the beach, all these people in the cities, they'll be gone. They'll be gone certainly by the event, or certainly by the after effects of no food, no air, no water, that kind of stuff. It'll be crazy. I sometimes wonder if this entire thrust of my work was to be able to enable me to see that. Because if I hadn't learned all the things I've learned over the past 15, 20 years in longevity and solar physics and stuff, I might not have ever been ready for this. I would have missed it, so to speak. I mean, it's terrible to think about it, but I expect to die. You know, that's the odds are I will. And if I don't, that's a great bonus. But I'm going to make every effort to make sure that I'm healthy enough to survive it, because I want to see it. I know it sounds crazy, but I want to live long enough to see the end of the world.